And hello, Hearts of Oak. Thanks so much for joining us once again. It's great to have Alistair Williams join us to discuss his upcoming tour with Tanya Edwards. Alistair, thanks so much for your time.
Anytime. You're more than welcome. You're more than welcome.
Great to have you on. And maybe let's just start with maybe bringing up the dates. And then if people don't watch any more, they can at least get those dates, and they're all available on Alistair's on his Twitter, and we'll put all the links in the description. So
thank you.
Whatever you want. Northampton starts in September, 5th September. Even London, Top Secret Comedy on the 6th, and then all the way down to Bath going into next year. It's quite what could Bath not slip in this year? Do they have to be their own year?
Well, for somebody like me, I'll be honest with you, it's not that easy to get a tour going.
Really?
Because no, the people might be surprised about how controlled the comedy industry is. If you're not with, Live Nation or one of the big establishment approved touring companies, it's very difficult to even get people to let you use their room. People are always like, why are you on tour? When you come to this town or wherever? It's like they control the rooms. They don't let you use the rooms a lot of the time. So this tour was a bit easier to book because I'm doing it with Tanya. And what I did was I was supporting Andrew Lawrence at one of his gigs, and I took a photo of his tour poster. And I'm like, right, all the places that let him in, they'll let me in. Like if you let him in.
About Kitty Hopkins as well, same type of thing.
See?
Just, where does she go?
That's what you do. You go, oh, this person's downstream from me, so if they're letting them in, I'll be a breeze. And that's sort of where we started. And we snowballed it from there. So a lot of it is based on who's going to let us in and when, sort of thing, because it's quite difficult to do a tour if you don't have any help and you're not part of the big sort of establishment machine, which I'm most definitely not. And then the second hard thing about it is, like me, when you've had most of your social media cancelled, is how do you tell the people who want to come and see you going on tour? Because you without your social media accounts it's very difficult to I often get people like, oh man, where did you go? It's like, I didn't go anywhere on purpose. It's just, I never see your stuff anymore is another one. So the good way to actually see my stuff is to come and see it in real life,
Well, here, let's, at the beginning, let's play a clip of you in action. This isn't what's God's view on smashing ULEZ cameras, and it said Comedy Unleashed. So let me just play this.
Okay.
You guys enjoying the ULEZ zone? You enjoying that? What a fantastic piece of democracy that is. Isn't it incredible? Finally, they're going to clean the London's air. Do you know how they're going to do it? They're going to charge us £20 to drive outside our own house. Amazing. You know, this only works in the middle-class areas. Like, they trial this thing in Bath. Because if you give people in Bath the choice between you got to pay a £12.50 fine or buy a 40 grand car, they're like, oh, I'll just buy a 40 grand car. If you do that in Peckham, you give them a choice between a 40 grand car or a £12.50 fine, they're like, well, I think I'm going to smash up the fucking camera. That's what I'm going to do. Do you know who the real winner is in this scenario? Vandals. Vandals used to have a bad reputation. Now it's like some Robin Hood scenario. You know what I'm saying? There is no one that will judge you for smashing one of these ULEZ cameras. You can go into a Catholic church and be like, Father, forgive me if I've sinned. He'll be like, what have you done? He'll be like, I smashed up a ULEZ camera. He'll be like, God says that's fine, bro. God also says there's a camera behind the church that's particularly annoying him. You know what I think might be going on? They're like, 40% of these cameras have been vandalized, right? But to be fair to Sadiq Khan, I think maybe 40% of these cameras might, there's so many knives and bombs and shit going off in London. Some of them have probably just been destroyed in the backswing. You know what I'm saying? They're like, Allah Akbar, and they slice a wire. That's probably at least 10 of them have gone down like that. You know what I mean? To be fair, also, have you seen the results? Wow, how clean is the air in London now? How amazing is it? Me and my wife, we're going to go on holiday to the Swiss Alps to get some... Now we're going to go to Aldgate, just walk around. The air is so clean in London now. If you go to East London, you can see the knife crime happening in West London. It's incredible. Incredible.
Right, Alistair, that was you at Comedy Unleashed, and that seems to be a venue that certainly you've been at numerous times. I've been there before and seen all different comedians. I remember going and seeing Andrew Lawrence and thought, that's funny. I think the line is well behind you now, but well, whatever. It's
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, you talked about venues. That seems to be a venue that's been open to people and lets comedians have an amount of freedom.
Yeah, I mean, 100%. But every venue used to be like that. Every comedy club should be exactly like that. It's just like, it's nothing incredibly, it's not an amazing idea. It's just, but it's so rare now. They're almost the only place that's doing that, which is just like, come on stage, do your comedy. If people laugh, they laugh. If they don't, they don't. But there's no other rules apart from that, really, which should be how all sort of comedy works. If you're saying something that's mean or people don't agree with, or it's, people just don't laugh and they just kind of go, oh, geez, and that it sort of polices itself. But it's become the realest comedy club that there is, really, and they're sort of pulling in front of all the establishment comedy clubs, if you like, who most of the comedy clubs in London, they now book on the basis of, right, we need to get 50% of people that look like this, and we need to get 25% of people that look like that, and we need a woman, we need a gay, this is kind of things that they say, like, we need more gays, we need more women. It's like, all you really need to do is book the funniest people, and comedy in itself is quite diverse. You know what I mean? If you just book the funniest people, you'll end up with black people, white people, women, gay people, straight people, disabled people. There's a very wide mix of who is funny. So you don't actually need to do any of that nonsense at all. But when you do start doing that, of course, you end up with, bills that they just don't work, because you're not selecting the funniest people anymore. You're selecting on different criteria. So a lot of the bigger, more established comedy clubs, the ones that wouldn't book me after the Brexit Burger King thing, it's like, you produce a piece of comedy that everyone loves and goes viral, and they're like, right, get him out of here. There's a clip online of loads of people laughing at his material. Cut him off. That's how they work. So, my policy has always been, okay, well, you do it like that, and we'll just let things happen naturally. And those clubs are selling less tickets, and the clubs like Comedy Unleashed are selling more tickets. And I think that's one of the reasons why they have to stop me from being able to tour or promoting my stuff, is if it was fair, people like me would win. Like, the only comedy competition I've ever won, British Comedian of the Year, the only reason I even entered it was because audience voted. And it's like, the only competition I will ever win is one that's audience voted. So when there was one that was audience voted, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to enter that, because that's like a real comedy competition. But the way comedy competitions work is there's a panel of judges, and if you're not super left wing or whatever, it doesn't matter how much people laugh. So you're not going to win. They're going to judge you out of existence. It's the same way the comedy festivals work, like Edinburgh, etc. It's all sort of run by the establishment, the people that write the newspaper articles about who's funny, the people who decide who gets to go on TV, even though no one watches TV anymore. It's the way that they sort of run the whole comedy industry. They're very keen to tell you what you think is funny or what you want to enjoy. They can't let people decide, because it would be very obvious.
Where does the pressure come from? Advertisers, or is it just self-regulating because maybe a lot of the individuals are maybe very woke in the industry, or does it come from maybe wanting to get like a Netflix deal and then fitting into those parameters, hoping that it'll be big? Where kind of does the restrictions come from?
It comes from all of those places, really. I mean, the first thing that they do to comedians is, everyone wants to get an agent, and everyone wants to get an agent. Everyone wants to get on TV, even though no one really watches TV anymore. You can't even get live work unless you're on TV. If you look at a comedy poster or anything for a live comedy show, it'll say like the comedian's name, and then in brackets straight away, 8 out of 10 cats.
Yeah.
Taskmaster, live at the that's how they control everything. They use that as a yardstick for, well, this person must have been on these TV shows, otherwise they won't be any good. So if you look at me on a comedy poster, Alistair Williams, they don't let me go on TV. So people are like, oh, he must be rubbish because he's not been on live at the Apollo. Meanwhile, the people they are putting on live at the Apollo are just absolutely terrible, some of them. So that's the first way that they control it. Everyone's trying to get an agent. Everyone in the whole industry is extremely woke, sort of left wing. So if you don't go along with that type of stuff, you won't get work, you won't do this. So everyone pretends to think the same way. And anyone that sort of goes against sort of any of that, you just sort of get blackballed and kicked out. So, most people are just sort of self-serving. They just, especially in the entertainment industry, they just want to be famous. They just want to win. They don't really have principles, and when you get to the sort of far left side of things get really sort of weird because they all sort of pat each other on the back on how lovely and beautiful and caring they are. But at the end of that road is some guy at Glastonbury chanting like death to this particular group of people, which is crazy. It's absolutely crazy to be chanting death to anyone. You might have seen the clip I'm talking about at Glastonbury, but even if you go around sort of right-wing events, in the sort of fringy sort of right-wing stuff, you'll never hear somebody on stage chanting death to this group of people, So when you get involved in that sort of far left thinking of we're so good and so special and so right and the other side's so wrong, you could just end up in this complete mess of a situation where you're really being just horrible and mean. And it's kind of what it's like in censorship and comedy, right? It's like you guys are just being so mean and so horrible and, under the guise of being nice. They all think they're being nice. But to come back to your original question, most of it is controlled through getting an agent, getting on TV, and also wanting to fit into the comedy industry. And like you said, advertising is the excuse that your agent will use. My agent used to be like, you got to get rid of this material because the advertisers won't like it. It won't get you on TV. And the reason I don't have an agent is I was always like, no, I'm not changing that. I'm not doing that. It's funny. People are laughing. I'm sticking with that. And they very soon, then they'll start telling everyone, oh, he's very difficult to work with. Oh, the Alistair is incredibly hard. They start saying you're hard to work with. And that goes around. You can imagine. It's impossible to be a real comedian these days and to operate, within the system, I believe.
No, I saw a post after that, after Bob Villa was on, and said the backlash to Bob Villa's set is disgusting. I said something. I worry that Glastonbury will no longer be a safe space for people who want to kill Jews. But how you can take, and I guess that it's what you do. You're looking at everyday situations or even bad situations, and then mocking it, and then wondering how far you go. So kind of how do you look at things? Because I get you're looking at news always in terms of actually how do you look at that in a way that you can laugh at, and then you think, well, should you be laughing at that? And I guess you can. Where did kind of that line go?
I mean,
for you, as you're preparing, kind of.
I've actually never offended anyone with my comedy in my entire life. I've never actually had a single complaint anywhere from anyone who said something else said was really offensive and it was horrible to this group of people, because it's not who I am at all. I don't pick on anyone in my comedy. I'm not hard left. I'm not hard right. I just like everyone to have a good time. Which, if you go back and watch Brexit Burger King, wasn't having a go at anyone. It wasn't mean. It was just, it was popular. And what it actually was getting both sides of an issue to laugh together and meet in the middle, which is, it's going to sound bizarre, but that's actually what they really hate, is the way society is built by the people that run it is they don't really care which side of any issue you're on, as long as you're arguing with the people who are on the other side. It's classic sort of divide and conquer. You know what I mean? So
Because that Brexit, you weren't targeting anyone. It was just taking the situation, laughing. So you weren't actually holding someone up and making them a target. And that's the weird thing. How do you get backlash against that when you're not actually attacking anyone?
what everyone says, they're like, I seen that bit. You got cancelled for that. And then they sort of think, hey, you can't have been cancelled for that. You must have said death to the Jews. Or so, you know what I mean? They kind of look like, I don't really believe that. But, you know, it is what it is. But yeah, genuinely, that was my interpretation of it. Was, you know, they want you to be splitting society down the middle, and just they don't care which side you're on. They just want you to pick a side. The whole thing's this big sort of Punch and Judy show, and they need a Punch and they need a Judy, and that's basically the way it works. And I just wasn't interested. I just wasn't interested on being railroaded into any position. I just wanted to, you know what I mean? Just wanted to make people laugh originally, just for the joy of making people laugh. But sticking to those principles quickly gets you booted out of the completely nerfed establishment comedy scene, basically.
Well, how long been on the comedy circuit? What, since really that Brexit clip? You were doing it before.
Yeah.
I mean, so how long has it been now? Where
15 years, something like
15?
that.
Wow.
Something like that.
Wow.
How old am I now? Yeah, maybe like 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
Been doing it. Something like that.
And is it to tell us about the difference? I guess the one with Tanya, you're doing it with someone, but there's a lot of pressure then on you. If you turn up at Comedy Unleashed, you do your slot, you're part of that, and they promote it. But actually, to do it yourself it takes effort, and you have to step out, and you have to do something different. Tell us kind of how you focus on that and why, because it's a lot easier not doing that, just going to Comedy Unleashed.
But you know, I get a lot longer at my tour show. You know, I get to do a longer set, 45 minutes. If I'm on somebody else's, I get to do 20 minutes.
Yeah.
You know, so people that are coming out to see me, they want to come and see me, and they're coming out and they only get to see me for 20 minutes. And also, I can be myself at Comedy Unleashed, but if you're coming to see me anywhere else, I can't.
Yeah.
I can't really be myself. People, they're not ready. They're not ready for. I can't talk about
they're not ready for Alistair.
fluoridization of the tap water to, you know, normal people. It's sort of, you know, so I can only really do my own stuff at place like Comedy Unleashed or at my own tour show. So it's very different. I really enjoy the tour show stuff, you know, a lot more. You know, it's exciting for me to be able to actually just do my own thing without having to worry about trying to keep it as not vanilla as I can, but you know what I mean? I've got to keep it. A promoter that pays me to be on a mixed bill, it's like, come in here, make these people laugh as much as you can, and that's it. They're not paying me to get my own opinions on things out there at all. You know what I mean? You can do it, but you know, there's a reason why no one's ever complained about me, because I'm on someone else's show. I'm not coming there I think I'm quite different to Andrew Lawrence in that way. I'm not setting out to say the most crazy controversial. I don't want half the country being like, oh God, who is this a-hole? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know that that's what Andrew's doing, but that's, you know what I mean? If he's not, he's doing it by accident a lot. You know what I'm saying? So I'm quite different in that respect. I'm not going out there to shock people or say something crazy. I just want to say, you know, what I think is true. And that gets me in a lot of trouble, mostly because it's true.
But I guess the focus can be to make people laugh, and the focus could be on the other side to make people go gasp and shock, and then somewhere in between. But I guess you don't need to go to that side. You can laugh at something and actually realize that actually you don't need to attack or have offense. So I get it's just a different way of making people laugh.
Totally. That's where I'm at.
Tell me about, again, working with other people. I guess Comedy Unleashed provides a point for you to connect because if you're not part of um, the mainstream group of comedians or those
Mm.
who are on panel shows, that sort of thing,
Yeah.
then you have to go in a different direction. And I guess that one, I guess Comedy Unleashed provides that connection, but then two, what is it like doing it with one other person? Do you do stuff together? Is it just separate? You've
It's
got
separate.
similar outlooks on things. What?
We got very similar outlooks on things. Like Tanya is, she's her own person, but she's her own person, but like a sort of a female version of who I am, if you know what I mean. She's the same. She's unfiltered. She's just like, this is what I think about things and the world and the way things are going. And a lot of her opinions would really, you know, blow people's eyes back who are just sort of, regular people who don't delve too deeply into stuff that they aren't told to think on the news, sort of thing. So we've got a very similar sort of outlook on things, and we get a lot of people who come to our shows to sort of think for themselves. Is the best way to sort of put it, and it's a very good mix between Tanya and me because we're quite different in our styles as well, and it's also it's nice for us to people that have seen me and their fans maybe they've never seen Tanya before. It's great they get to come and they see someone new and vice versa. So I think it works very well, and it's more fun just doing it with someone else. You know what I mean? It's way more fun. You get to both do the promotion for the tour like I'm doing now, and it's twice as fun. It's half as much hard work, and you know people get two for the price of one. It's a no brainer. And often when people go on tour, they bring like a support act or whatever.
Mm.
So there's often two people, but that tends to be someone who just goes on for like 10, 15 minutes at the beginning, and they get paid like £100 or something awful. Except for Andrew Lawrence, who plays very well, is a nice guy. But so it's similar sort of formula. It's just we're both doing longer sets, and it's split down the middle sort of thing. So and it works really well. When we do these shows in London, they've all sold out. Like the biggest comedy club in London, 330 seats. It's been packed, and people have been saying, "You got to bring this to the north. You got to bring this here. You got to bring this there." So it's very much responding to that sort of demand for us to go out and bring sort of real stand-up comedy back. So that's what we're doing.
Have you had people reach out to you with ideas of venues? I mean, I remember back in my UKIP days, we used to have
Yeah.
real difficulty on getting venues, and you had to kind of have friendly pubs you could gather
Yeah.
in. Do you have kind of similar people reaching out saying, "Hey, I've got my kind of local venue. They're up for doing stuff."
I've
Does
had a
that
couple,
happen?
yeah. I've had a couple, yeah, and there's places like the Attic. There's a place in Southampton. It's the Attic Studios that we do, and they're just known as a very like it's proper sort of art space. It's proper like they book Andrew Lawrence there. They book anyone who's a comedian. They book down there, and they don't police it based on people think this guy shouldn't be allowed to work. They're just like a normal group of people. So you do know of people that are like that, and you do occasionally get people reach out and say, "Hey, I've got a thing. I'd love to have you down here." There's a guy who does barnyard comedy, in a barn. There is a sort of underground movement, I guess, if you like. So yeah, that does happen. But like Top Secret Comedy Club's good stuff. If we're filling like 330 seats in London, that's really good for these places. So there's a motivation for them to have us on. So it works both ways, I guess. But yeah, a bit of that does happen.
And
If
it's
anyone
not
has a venue, hit us up.
no, and it's accessible. How does again the finance side, because you need to survive,
Mhm.
and I was looking at some of the venues, and some of them are like £10 a ticket,
Mm.
so it's that cheap.
Yeah,
That's, I mean, a pint is nearly getting close to 10 quid in
yeah.
parts of London. um, how does actually make it work? Because you need to come away, obviously the venue gets paid, but that means you're not making gazillions of pounds on
No.
this.
No, I'm not. No, I'm not. But we've priced the tickets fairly. People don't have loads of money these days. So we price the tickets fairly so that more people will come. And if we fill up these venues, we'll make enough money that is worth it. You know, um, it's a lot more. If you can fill your own venue with your own audience, it's a much better financial deal for you than going on to someone else's show, and getting the fee that they give you. So you know, it does. We've priced it in such a way that people can just afford to come, but it will work out for us provided we sell, enough tickets. Like Northampton, for example, is 800 seats. So,
Friday the 5th of September,
yes,
Northampton. Buy
if you
your
live anywhere
tickets
near
now.
there, come
Buy
along
10 tickets.
and bring 85 friends if you can, please. If
Um,
that's okay.
But yeah, getting the message out, obviously coming on shows, and it's always good to have you on. I think last time, what could have been the only time actually, talking about your faith, and I want to touch on that and
Please.
maybe how that fits in with the comedy. But yeah, how do you promote it? Is it by just connecting with people online and actually telling people what's happening? I mean, I'd love to come along, and I'll aim to come along to London the 6th of September.
Good man.
And it's a great venue. I'd never been the venue, but it's a great location. It's easy to
it's
come
great.
to. It's not on the end of one of the tube lines. It's actually in London.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, how, again, promotion, word of mouth, I guess, is a big way. People see you and they say, hey, you need to get along. Alistair's coming in a couple of months. Tickets are not expensive, so come along. Is it word of mouth the main way?
Yeah, there's word of mouth. I still have social media accounts that are just kind of throttled and controlled, so I can still reach a certain amount of people. And then it's, going on shows like this, doing interviews, doing podcasts, letting people know, where I'm going to be and that sort of thing. So we've only just started promoting it really. This is like the first week of really sort of promoting it. But yeah, it's just doing sort of everything that you can. But the tickets are selling pretty fast. We're quite excited about, the start that we've made. And obviously London, people would just come. They would come and they would come and they would come. So we're imagining that will just be the same, all across the sort of the UK. And I think it will. But, we don't have the establishment media thing behind us. We're not going to be on, the TV shows, and it's not going to be. There's a lot of cross promotion, like people that are already famous. They talk about the up and coming person and they follow them on tour. There's a lot of that. We don't have access to any of that stuff, but it's going well. It's going well. So I'm confident that we can sell a lot of these venues out, and that's the way it's been going so far. And I think there's an appetite for this. There really is an appetite for real stand-up comedy. It's a great night out. People that come, they're always like, man, I enjoyed that so much. I've laughed like that, for a long time. It's really, really good for you. It's good for your health. And,
but it's the social side as well. It's about connecting with like-minded people, and it's going to the venue, listening to you and Tanya, but also going out and having a drink after, and
which we do
connecting
with
other people.
everything. Every time we do a date, we go, right, we're going here afterwards, and people, a lot of people come and they're like, dude, I don't have anyone that thinks like me near where I am, and they make friends at these events. You know what I mean? So that side of it is great as well. So yeah, thanks for mentioning that. I probably should have mentioned that as well.
No. What about connecting with other? Have you looked at? I mean, throughout the COVID tyranny, we've all connected with people that we wouldn't have expected, or in different areas. And I kind of think the music industry, and there have been individuals who stood out in terms of speaking truth through music and have been cancelled and censored and all of that.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought of mixing kind of the comedy side with music?
Yeah, I guess so. People kind of do that. They have like certain festivals, the Sounds Beautiful Festival is one that comes to mind. Jam for Freedom is another one I went to. Wasn't the best organized, but there are people out there doing that with the sort of the festival scene, which is, I do appear at those ones that I mentioned, so I do go along and do comedy at those sort of events. But yeah, it's a good idea, and it has sort of been done. But at the moment, this is enough admin for me, Peter. Just organizing a comedy tour, bringing in cymbals and accordions or whatever. Maybe next time. But for now, just start off with this, and maybe work up to that. You know what I mean?
Tell me about, and the last time around we really focused completely on this, but just to touch on it about faith and how that fits in, because I guess in some ways, comedians are supposed to be vanilla, just make people laugh, and you don't bring your views into it because you may actually alienate people. But if someone just laughs at something, just like if someone goes to a band and sings along, that's fine. Then when you talk about killing people, then it's like, oh, I don't really like that. So suddenly you divide. How does it work in terms of yeah, actually, in terms of you putting yourself out, one, you got vulnerability, but two, there's a danger then of splitting, or the other side, I guess, is getting a group of people who really feel part of what you do, and connect with you on a deeper level, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, the key to everything is making it funny. Like that's the great thing about stand-up comedy is if you make it funny and people are laughing, they don't care what you're talking about. They'll listen and they're interested. If that's what a good public speaker is, somebody that throws like jokes in there all over the place and people are laughing. It's like, oh, you're considering your audience here. Like you're making this so I'm enjoying what you're saying outside of the point that you're making. You're just sort of making it funny. And with my faith, there's just such a rich vein of comedy in, almost not many people are sort of Christians anymore, right? And they sort of look at you like you're some sort of maniac if you think that Jesus was a real person to be believed in. But when you stop and you really think about it, right? Like your birthday, which is what everyone knows when they were born, okay? But your birthday, what it really tells you is how many years, months, and days after Jesus you were born, you know? But people look at me and they laugh at me because I believe in Jesus. It's like, without Jesus, you don't know when you were born, like every date in history revolves around this guy, being born. And people have forgotten what he said. They've forgotten that he's any sort of figure to be looked up to. It's like all time, all of the dates that we have stopped and were rewritten and were wrapped around this guy. And people they don't even investigate him anymore. They don't really know what he said. They've just forgotten about him. And we're following other things now, like ourselves, the number of followers that we have, and things are just getting awful. Society is really sort of dropping down and further and further and further. And there's such a rich vein of comedy and just sort of, how Ricky Gervais does his big hour about how anyone who believes in God is a complete idiot. Well, I just sort of like to flip it around. You know what I mean? And just sort of attack back the other way and say, wait a minute, isn't it crazy to have the opposite opinion, which you're never going to see on the TV? They're never going to let, that sort of opinions be sort of let loose out there. But, there's a huge, rich vein of comedy in there for somebody who actually believes in God and can sort of, poke fun at the idea of, wait a minute, you don't think there's sort of a creator in this entire incredible universe? You think this is all just some big sort of accident? Like you believe in nothing, which is what they give you instead of God. It's actually you either believe in God or you believe in nothing. And it's like, well, which of those sounds like it might be better for you, to believe in God or to believe in nothing? Because if you look at the creation of the universe, it's either, well, God either created it, or what does the world tell you? It's like, oh, nothing exploded. It's either God or nothing. And people actually think that believing in nothing makes them better off. But we all know that not to be true. Is it good to believe in nothing? No. You ask people that, I'm like, no, you shouldn't believe in nothing. But that's what is actually behind the curtain of what they've replaced God with. They did the whole Indiana Jones, the old switcheroo. They took God out and they replaced it with nothing. And then people have got this hole inside of them, living these miserable lives. Everything in the world's getting more bleak, more gray, and we're wondering why. It's because, they took out the soul of every human being and replaced it with nothing. So it's really sort of exploring that. This is a large part of my set. It's really exploring that, but giving people something to laugh about at the same time.
No, it's interesting when you watch some people who are more high profile kind of making the journey and realizing that to be an atheist, to believe there is nothing, that is a very absolute position that you're betting your life on, and you can never know there is not. And so you see people as they begin to realize that's quite a stupid position to have. Oh, maybe there might be a God. Okay, we're now in the maybe. Now keep moving along there. But that absolute, no, 100% he doesn't exist. 100%? Wow. That is fairly certain, and a crazy level of certainty for what life is all about.
And a lot of people have this. People do not realize how quickly this turned around. Like these days, most people in this country don't believe in God. 100 years ago, everyone did. 100 years ago, which is a tiny fraction of time, literally almost everyone did. 300 years ago, they would look at you like you were crazy if you don't believe in God. For all of human history, we have believed in God. It is very recent that we've decided that God is a load of nonsense, and instead because we've got technology, we're so smart now that we don't need in God. Meanwhile, we're just staring at these things, becoming more and more miserable. We've just decided that God isn't real, and we're turning little boys into girls and chopping their genitals off, and we don't know which toilet to go in. You know what I mean? Like, we think we've progressed. We don't believe in God anymore. And we're like, we don't know which toilet to go in. You know what I mean? Like, things have got so bad so fast, and people haven't even stopped to think, like wait a second. This position of there is no God, there is no point to what we're doing. It's all we're just some freak occurrence, nothing exploded, and then we became tadpoles, and then the tadpoles changed into chickens, and then the chickens changed into giraffes, and then they changed into monkeys, and now I'm me. And no one ever stops to be like, wait a minute, that's the most ridiculous thing that I've ever heard in my life. People don't realize that all these things are called theories. The Big Bang Theory.
But no,
the
it's fact,
theory of
Alistair. It's
evolution.
been proved. We've recreated, I'm sure.
None of it is science. Like science, the idea of a science experiment, okay? People think these things are science. The idea of a science experiment is I can tell you something is true, and you can come along and you can perform the same experiment, and you'll get the same result, and that'll show you that it's true. There isn't a single example in the world anywhere. There's no experiment you can do where you can take a duck and it then becomes a turtle, right? There isn't any experiment anywhere that shows an animal or any life form changing kind from one to another. There isn't any science behind that whatsoever. Showing you a picture of some bones or a little graph of like a monkey slowly becoming a person, that is not science at all. That is like a drawing that a child can do. There's actually no scientific proof behind the theory of evolution. And if you get into the history of Charles Darwin, he was a huge Satanist, right? And he was a Freemason, and this whole theory of evolution was created, and it's really laughable when you dig into it, to get people to just go, oh, I'm so smart that I can forget about God now because I was a monkey, and then I just changed into me. So, there's actually a very sinister agenda behind getting everyone to feel like they're nothing and they were created from nothing and they're not made in the image of God. Instead, you're just a randomly created bag of cells or whatever. If you get into the mathematics of the possibility, the mathematical possibility that two life forms would create sexual reproductive organs in the male and the female that work together perfectly, okay? And they just randomly evolved, male and female, reproductive organs. Do you have any idea of it's a mathematical impossibility, evolution. No one's going to create comedy about this apart from me. No one's going to look at this, and if they do, they certainly won't be on the television. But if you're Ricky Gervais and you want to do a whole hour about how God is this idiot and completely made up, oh, dude, you'll be everywhere. If you want to get people to doubt in God, that'll be so popular. But if you want to take the other side of it, you'll never see the light of day. But that's the way it is. Sorry, that was a long answer.
No. It's. I think it was one of Eric Metaxas' books that I read, and he goes into the world and the chances of things happening. And even if you look at the elements in the world, and the elements are perfectly designed to actually have life. And if you have a percentage out here and there then life isn't possible.
Mm.
And he said the chances of even taking two of the elements for exactly the same are like billions to one. And then you take everything, including distance from the sun and all the makeup of the atmosphere. It is utterly impossible. And yet we believe the impossible, which I guess it's concerning because it shows people are maybe naturally gullible, and they go with something which looks confident, which is utter BS, and yet they buy into it just because, I guess, just because everyone else says it, and they just
It
nod
makes you
along.
feel smart. It
Yeah,
makes it the same way having a smartphone makes you feel smart. But in actual fact, this phone is very smart, but it makes you dumb. No one knows how to do anything anymore. No one knows how to question anything anymore. They're just the same thing with AI. Oh, it's so smart, but what it really does is just make people lazy. And it makes people dumb, and it makes people, you know, rely on something else apart from what's in them. And I think that's the way society is going. And the more technology that we have, the more miserable everyone is. That's a part of my act where explain about all the new inventions that we were given and how things are just noticeably a lot worse since we got them. But they pretend like, oh, great, we got this and that. You know, even like how we've got streaming services, right? And like you just click a button and you watch this movie or that, and people think, oh, that must be so much better than the old days. Do you remember walking around like a Blockbuster video? Like how fun that was, how amazing and nostalgic. And watch a video of like Blockbuster video, dude. That was kids running around. Look at this, look at that. Now people just on streaming services. The stuff that they give you that you think is making your life better, if you actually drill into it, it's actually making you, miserable.
no, it's true. You watch something, and now you're told, well, here are the next 10 programs you want to
Mhm.
watch, and they're all number one. All 10 of them are number one in the UK, so
Mhm.
you have to watch it. And there's no,
Grim.
going to wait for something to come out and it being a blockbuster and being promoted and critiqued. And no, it's just, here's the next 10 things to do, so you don't have to do anything,
Mhm.
or 10 things to watch, so you don't have to do anything.
Yep.
Yeah. I want to finish with, I had Alex Phillips on the other day,
Okay.
and it was interesting. I reached out to her after I saw her baptism, which she put up, and that's really interesting. Someone in the media space, kind of the political space, vocal about their faith, and you as well, because you don't have to do your Sunday Bible readings. You don't have to go with that. You could be a Christian, I guess, although it isn't possible, but we're told it is. You can be a Christian in private and not really talk about it. And I think, we don't really wear our faith on our sleeves often, but it's actually not possible if you're a Christian to believe the good news of the Bible,
Mm.
to actually not want to express
Sure.
that, to keep it
Yeah.
quiet. So, yeah.
Yeah. I think it's important these days for people to say, listen, this is what we're missing. This is what is making everything go wrong. This is where we're going wrong. We're moving away from God. We're moving away from the teachings of Jesus, which is love other people as and treat them as you would want them to be treated. You know, when you actually dig in to the things that it's Christianity that made this country great. People talk about, oh, the fall of the West, like being in the West somehow makes a country more productive because we're in the West. But there's no Western, set of principles that we all follow. It's France was a Christian country. The UK was a Christian country. We followed the teachings of God made human, Jesus Christ. We followed his teachings, we followed his principles. We had people that run the country. Everyone believed in God, and there was a shared morality. The people that were ruling over us all believed that an all-powerful God was watching everything they did, and they were going to get judged by him if they didn't do the right thing. So people do the right thing. Now we don't have any of that. We don't have God-fearing people running the country. So what do you get? Well, you get corruption. You get, huge, giant businessmen with no morals ruining everyone's life. You get digital control grids. It's important for people to say, this is actually it's a spiritual problem that we're having. It's not a political one. You know, you can't vote your way out of this. You know, the guys in the red tie or the guys in the blue tie. Ultimately, if you ask me, they're all part of the same, same thing. They're all part of the same thing. I don't think you can vote your way out of this. It's a spiritual war that we're in. It's good against evil, and I think it's important to give people that option and to speak about your faith and to be that voice of one crying in the wilderness, make straight the way of the Lord.
Yeah. Being a prophet to this generation and speaking out. Alistair, love you coming on, and it is just if people watch your last on Rumble, he does have his mic muted, so it does take a while. So it's always good having your mic on whenever you're doing
My kids
stuff.
come in there and they press the buttons, and sometimes I forget to check, and they like the mute button.
Do you know what mine? So my younger one, somehow he has redone my sound desk. When I turn it on, it comes up a female voice. That's and then I don't know how he's done it, and I can't get rid of it. So
that's the hard thing. You have to bring them back in and get them to mash the keyboard, and sometimes it comes back on. That's what I do.
Come up with something. But let me just bring up this just to remind people.
Thank you.
You get Northampton Friday the 5th September. You get London the 6th. You get Totnes, then all the way through Newcastle, Ludlow, Stafford, Glasgow, Southampton, and into Bath. And if all those are a sellout, then maybe Alistair will get over to Wales. Is Ludlow?
I'd love to be Wales.
And you'd love to go to Northern Ireland, wouldn't you?
Yeah, big time.
There
if anyone's got a venue there, hit me up.
Those are two options, so we'll have to see what we can do on that. But certainly, I'll aim to be there on London on the 6th of September. So go through. As I said, tickets are like tenner for a lot of them. So go and buy some tickets for friends, and make it a great evening of comedy and then catching up after. But Alistair, really appreciate you coming on. Looking forward to it, and thanks for updating us on what's happening.
Thank you so much, man. Speak soon.